Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Meta Cafe for your daily astrology, human design, and oracle energy report. Happy spring, everybody, or at least in the next hour, we'll experience the spring equinox. Good morning, Suzanne. It's good to see you out there. And the spring equinox is the beginning of the astrological year, so it's also Happy New Year. Because the spring equinox is actually the representation of when the sun moves to 0 degrees of Aries and thus begins a new round of the 360-degree circle of the constellations, of the zodiac signs. So Aries, let's talk a little bit about Aries. It's a wonderful, fun sign, very youthful, very dynamic. Its ruler is the planet Mars. And so the planet Mars and Aries have an affinity for one another. In other words, because Mars is the ruler of the sign, they work well together. Mars takes on action and dynamic motion forward. It's fairly assertive and even at times aggressive. Good morning, Mimi. It's good to see you out there. So what we have really when we cross over into the 0 degrees Aries is a new starting point, right? A new start. It's almost like being at the starting line of a race, and the not the checkered flag, that would be the end. So the green flag is about ready to be dropped, right? And the green flag represents a new beginning. So taking a look then at what is going on with the planets. Good morning, Cheryl. During the equinox, we get a sort of feel for what the next 3-month period of time is going to bring. But we're also standing in a portal right now. And what do I mean by that? Well, a portal is a gateway. And the gateway allows two things. One, a look ahead, because we're facing in that direction and that's where we're moving. But the portal also offers us the opportunity to look behind and see where we've been, and especially since the last equinox, and how is our life different? What have we done? What have we left undone? How does the tapestry of our life look different from the looking behind? Good morning, Michelle. And how does it look as we move forward, right? We're in what we could call a 0 point, a point of no point right now, where we're just sort of poised on the edge of that gateway. So, I invite you all to spend some time just this morning, right? Just this morning, of kind of evaluating, where life has taken you over the last 6 months. It's been 6 months since we've had an equinox, right? And a lot has happened. I know in my own personal life, a lot has happened in just the last couple days. So of course, a lot can happen in 6 months. And not as a way to beat yourself up and think, oh God, I didn't do that and I said I was going to do this. No, not that at all. Just to evaluate where you've been in order to see where you might want to go. This is a unique point in time, in other words, that we get to share together this morning. The equinox actually occurs at 9:16 a.m. Pacific Coast time. So it'll be 12:16 p.m. for you guys on the East Coast. Tune in at that moment if you can. We'll be done here before then. And you'll have a moment or two, or half an hour maybe, an hour maybe even, to soak in some of that gateway energy, looking backwards and looking forwards and seeing what we're going to do. What are you going to do next? So if we look then at the lineup of planets and what they're doing on the equinox, we get a feel for what the next 3 months may bring. And even that is kind of a dicey bet at most, because, things change and all of your charts are different. So you want to be able to relate this sort of to your chart. Again, if you have your chart with you, take a look right now at where Aries is in your chart, because that's where the action is taking place for at least today and in the foreseeable future. What is actually beginning now has ramifications for you all the way up to the next equinox. I hope that makes sense, right? So these are pulses, and the pulse lets off, its energy, and it takes us and propels us through to the next equinox or to the next change of seasons, which won't be until June. So we have an opportunity to sort of consciously connect with what is happening. So when you look at the chart, let me see if I can show you this, because I'm never really good at doing this. There we go. Okay, so this is the equinox chart. And the first thing I thought is, oh yeah, that looks like a mess, right? That looks like a mess. Lines going everywhere. But two things struck me. One is there is the preponderance of planets in Earth sign Capricorn. We have Mars, Saturn, Black Moon, Lilith, and Pluto. And then if you look, oops, hello, over here, a preponderance of planets again in, why can't I do this? There we go. Over here in Aries, nope, over here in Aries. I'm such lame-o. There we go, Aries, where we have the Sun and Mercury and Venus, Eris and Uranus. The moon has since moved over to Taurus. So what does that mean for you? Oh, second thing, right? Those two make up one thing, but the other thing I noted is this yod pointing right down here at the north node. And you can't really tell, I should have highlighted it for you, but there's some green dashed lines, and they form an isosceles triangle, if you can go back to your geometry days in high school perhaps, where you have a 60-degree base or angles at the base, and it points to 150 degrees up to the point. And that point becomes, it looks like an upside down lotus flower. Oh my goodness. Let me show that again. Are you talking about all that? It does. Michelle, you're brilliant. Yep. So the yod is pointing us at our destiny, or the north node, and forming the base of that yod is the Black Moon, Lilith, and let's see, who else is at that base? And Neptune. Wow. So reality through looking at our shadow, and Neptune following our intuition, forming the base, pointing us in the direction of our destinies, which is still in Leo, very heart-centered energy. So if you have not yet connected to what your heart's desires are, think about doing that during the spring equinox window. Connect to what your heart desires. You know, I talk to a lot of people on any given day, and a lot of people are searching for their what. We talk about it all the time with people. What is your what? Because through the human design lens, your what is the only real question that you have the ability to answer. What is your what? So if your what is that you want to create a business that's dynamic and successful and is supporting you monetarily, that's your what. And it's kind of a couple different what's in there, right? Financial success is in there, your business success is in there, and being able to have freedom perhaps to pay your bills on time and have extra money to support your favorite charities. All of those are your what's. Those what's need to be coming from your heart. They need to be coming from the place inside of you that really is tickled pink when it thinks about doing this. And when you align yourself that way, even when challenges come up, you don't let those challenges pull you off in a new direction or take you and, bummer out your energy. Good morning, Roseanne. You keep to what it is that you have aligned yourself with. And you walk through this portal right now. You walk through this portal with your heart out there and assuming that you're going to get what you want instead of assuming that you're not going to get what you want, right? Assume for once that the universe is on your side. The universe is always on your side. And even if you don't get exactly what you want, it's usually better. Or there's a reason why what you wanted isn't what you got because you weren't in alignment with it, or maybe it wasn't what you truly wanted. I think sometimes we do that too. We think we want one thing and what we really wanted was something else. So getting some clarity today as you have like this moment in time between 29 Pisces and 0 Aries to consider, what is my heart's desire, right? What is my heart's desire? Now the sun, and by the way, the reason I pull that up is because the North Node is in Leo, fire, right? Fire sign. And if we look at the way the energy is sitting, at least through the elements on the equinox, we see a ton of fire energy. Aries is a fire sign. So we have a lot of ability to start something new, to assert ourselves in the world, to assert and put forth our agenda, what it is we desire. We have a lot of passion and creative energy at our fingertips, right? This is about birth. This is about birthing something new. This is about taking it to the next level, right? If you've already got something birthed, this is about taking it to the next level, the next rung on the spiral. So it's really interesting time that we find ourselves in, an interesting period that we find ourselves in. The other element energy that's very pervasive in this particular equinox is the earth energy, the boots on the ground energy. It's not just enough to have this passion and this creative energy all up here floating around, right? That's very Neptunian. That's one half of the base. The other part of the base is the got to do something with this energy, right? It is Lilith in Capricorn that says you got to take steps. You can't just let it float, right? You got to take steps. And of course, if I would be remiss if I didn't say that you took the steps according to your type and strategy in human design, right? If you're a generator, a manifesting generator, you are responding to what shows up in your outer world. If you are a manifester, you are acting upon these impulsive sort of thoughts that come up, your creative energy that wants to be expressed. If you're a projector, you're waiting for the invitation to join in so that you can lead or guide or manage or counsel people to get to where they want to be. And if you're a reflector, you're waiting for 28 days before you make the mistake of acting too soon, right? You're waiting for the moon to guide you through all of the gates it will touch, and then you have more clarity. I'm so glad I'm not a reflector. I shouldn't say that. Next life, I'll have to come back as a reflector. Dang it. So boots on the ground and creative, passionate energy. That is the way the equinox sets up. And for the next foreseeable few weeks, that's exactly what we get, right? And so you may find yourself really like sort of wanting to be impulsive and take action. But impulse, and Aries itself is an impulsive sign, right? It is very impulsive. It acts first, thinks later. But we've got this Capricorn energy over here holding us down a bit, keeping our feet perhaps on the ground in a way that we really maybe don't always have available to us at an equinox. So I think this is a really good time then for us to be able to enact what it is that we want to do, because we can take deliberate steps, deliberation, right? I'm taking these steps deliberately. I'm following a plan even perhaps. But you got to make room in the plan for God's plan, because sometimes there's a bigger plan in play. And the only way you will see that is if you are taking one step, waiting for the next one to appear, and then taking that step. Let's see what everybody's saying. Roseanne saying, I'm multitasking but listening. I love it. Michelle says, oh, okay, so that was the upside down lotus flower. Good morning, everybody else. So I think everybody should be feeling rather hopeful this morning. Right, there's this sort of anticipatory energy I feel in the atmosphere, if you will, that something good is coming. I got to share a story with you. You know, I love signs and I love sort of the magical things that happen. So I'm sitting here this morning preparing, and I get this text from my husband, and it says, "Oh my God, you won't believe what just happened." I was driving down Chuckanut, which is a main thoroughfare. It takes him right down to where he works. And it's a road that you can drive, I think, 55 miles an hour down because it's quite open going through farmland. And he said there was an eagle flying right at him, a bald eagle. We have them all over the place here. So it's not so much that the bald eagle was there, but the bald eagle's flying right at him. And I've had this happen to me on Chuckanut before, where a hawk was doing the same thing. But this eagle is flying right at him, and it has a duck in its talons. And it drops the duck right at my husband, who has to slam on the brakes before the duck coming down at him would have, maybe broken the windshield. And the duck, it's a dead duck, right? It's already died, but it bounces off the ground. And I went, oh my God, that's got to be a sign, right? Nature showing you a sign, spirit as represented by the eagle. And I'm not sure what duck means. I meant to look that up before I got you guys online with me this morning, but I would bet you duck has something to do with abundance. Let's see here. Let's just look that up. What does duck mean shamanically? And let's just see if I can find it. Duck, 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 goose. Duck. The spiritual meaning of the duck speaks the message. Be in the now. Be in the moment. For this is where all of your power exists and is available to you. Duck loves the gentle motion of slow-moving water drifting along meandering rivers and ponds. This is a powerful message to go with the flow, where the waters take you naturally. Duck invites you to the river for a picnic and a day of rest and relaxation. Be at peace and just let it be. Oh, and don't forget the breadcrumbs. Then, of course, we also have these other meanings for duck. Lucky duck, right? Preparation meets opportunity. Duck arrives in this world knowing just what to do and how to do it. So I won't go on. It's a whole nother couple of paragraphs, but interesting, right? Spirit dropping this be in the now message on my husband as he's driving to work. I'll have to tell him that later. So I always look for the symbolism in what's going on, and he's in my life. He's sharing that symbol with me. And so there is a message then for all of us perhaps to take away in that standing in that gateway, be in the now, right? You can look backwards and you can look forward, but be here in that moment, right? Be in that moment. And that moment is an hour away. So you have time to consider, to meditate, to dream, to imagine, and plan what's the next step. So the sun in this particular period of time, let's look at some of the things that he's connected to and what that might mean, right, for us in the next 3 months of this season. So the sun today is squaring Mars. So both action planets, right? We've got, well, somebody pointed out to me the other day, the sun isn't a planet. I call it a planet. I know it's not, it's a star, but I'm calling it a planet, okay? The sun in square with Mars is maybe kind of challenging, as maybe there are some ego conflicts that come up or some internal conflicts between what I desire and what I believe I can have, or what life has shown me I can have. So we may be having to work through a few challenges. The other challenge I see quite frequently is people have an idea of what they want, but no idea how to go and get it. And that comes by following your human design, of course, but also there's a sense sometimes, and I see this even in my own life at times, of the thing that we want not being practical, right? Or not being useful, or somehow in our limited imagination or in our limited mind, we can't see how it would come to pass. And of course, that stops the energy right there. So I encourage everybody, no matter what it is that your heart's saying you want, it's true, it's authentic for you. And why let your mind take you out of that game, right? Why let your mind take you to all the reasons why you can't have it or why it's not practical? That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good at all. So come into alignment with your desires instead of letting something like your mind take you away from it, right? Good morning, Katie. And so that's a big message for us here in this particular time period. First of all, don't let the actions take you off in 15 directions unless you're a manifesting generator and you're responding to that many directions. If you're a generator, don't do it. Right? You mainline, right? That's the generator mainlines. And the projector is still waiting for the invitation to join in to whatever it is that they're meant to do. And the invitation will come. Projectors fear that the invitation won't come, but it always does. Generators and manifesting generators fear that the right opportunity won't be there for them to respond to, but it always is. The outer world is always dancing with you. So let me just get that one out of the way. The sun in this equinox is trining Jupiter. That's extraordinary news, right? Because that means that the sun's energy is working really well with the planet of growth and expansion. Now, sometimes, remember, we've talked about trines before. Trines are 120-degree angles. It is a smooth flow of the energy between the signs or between the planets. And with that sometimes comes laziness, right? It's like, oh, this is so easy for me. I don't have to try. I don't have to try any harder. Or if I just took one little step, a little power step forward, a watershed of events might happen that propel me to the top. But instead I stay locked in this, ease and flow of this energy. So don't let the energy become stagnant for you or locked in and, oh, this is great. Everything's going good. Because then you're still lagging behind what your heart may want, which is that next step, right? But we have that opportunity as things are fairly optimistic looking ahead at this next season. Saturn is also in a square with the sun today, and that's because Saturn and Mars are in a conjunction, so they're both squaring the sun. So we move into the equinox with some deliberateness. We've already talked about this, right? It's like these things are lining up for one another to really tell us the message. And the message is taking deliberate energy or deliberate steps forward with your creative energy. What was I going to say next? Then there is a conjunction still with the sun and Chiron. Yesterday they were in an exact conjunction. Today they're parting. And it makes me think, this is what that one makes me think about. Chiron is still where it's going to be. It's the slower moving body. It's the sun that's moving past it, right? And so it highlights it. So it's like shining a light on it, but the beam is getting closer. Yesterday it really shined the light on it. Today it's still pretty bright and shining on it, and the sun is moving faster, so it's passing by and the light is dimming on that wound. This is an extraordinary moment in time to let go of these victim mentalities that are holding us back. You do know, right, that when you're complaining, when you're blaming, or when you're in fear, you're really in victim energy. Right? So being willing to let go of the fear, that is the hardest thing, right? Letting go of the fear. We get, to me, it feels like we get into a pattern or a habit of fear, right? It's like we greet everything automatically with some level of fear, be it suspicion, be it doubt, be it some kind of, that doesn't sound right kind of energy. Or that can't be true, like with some kind of incredulity. So stop that. Why don't we open up our hearts and greet all of these things with awesomeness, right? With, wow, look at that. And then wait for a minute to see if this is really meant for you. Is this showing you something, right? Saturn and Jupiter work well together, even though they are at odds with one another seemingly. So the sun in a trine with Jupiter is sort of growing and expanding, while the sun in a square with Saturn is saying, but hold the phone, right? You don't have all of the nuts and bolts in place yet. And if you want growth to be sustainable, you have to have the structure and the form there. We see what happens out in the world when we don't have form and structure while we're building something, right? Bridges fall, things like that happen, right? So we want to make sure we have everything in check. So that brings me to the next little problem, the little kinky in the ironworks here this morning. And that is tomorrow, Mercury turns retrograde. And we know better than to take action, or at least not new action, when Mercury is in retrograde motion. And Mercury's in retrograde in Aries. Right? So grumble, grumble, moan, moan. No, let's not grumble and moan. That puts us in victim energy. Let's go back and just look at what Mercury's message might be for us. How do we make the plan better? Maybe there's a sense of the right timing. Maybe the timing isn't quite correct. So we're just going to wait and be patient. Not a Mars quality, by the way. Mars ruling Aries. Aries, not a patient person. But let's try to be a little bit patient and see what might happen next. What's this leading us to? So this equinox is filled with these little wonderful tidbits. It's also in a trine, by the way, the sun in a trine with Ceres, the goddess of plenty. So it makes it sound like this might be a really good spring, right? Enough rain, enough sunshine to make the food begin to grow, the trees to begin to blossom, the flowers to begin to grow. Here in the Pacific Northwest where I live, we have right now fields upon fields of daffodils blooming. And right after the daffodils will come fields and fields of beautiful colored tulips. And every year it affirms to us that it's springtime, right? It's springtime in the Skagit when the daffodils are blooming and the tulips are blooming. And it really calls thousands, millions of people to our valley to look at the beauty. I mean, it's the Skagit Valley is, like second in the world in growth of tulip bulbs, behind Holland, right? That's huge. It's a big industry here, and it makes for some beautiful photography, and it really affirms to us all that there is a rightness to the season, right? As new things are coming up from the ground. And because Ceres is a goddess of plenty, it does sort of portend for a very fruitful springtime. But like anything, there is an overkill, right? We've got to keep things in perspective, keep it in proportion. And that's sort of the message there with the sun both trining Jupiter and squaring Saturn, is that let's keep it in proportion, right? So we don't want to grow too fast, too far, or at the wrong time, right? We want everything to be happening in divine right timing. And right now we have the stellar ability to keep to that divine right timing, that time code that we're stamped with. Let's see what else looks fun here. I think that's about it from the standpoint of the sun. If we look at the moon, so the sun represents our outer world selves, right? And the actions that we take in the outer world, more of from our ego. The moon represents more of the soul part of us, the more emotional self, right? The more soul self. Say that 10 times fast. And the moon on the equinox is at 8 degrees of Taurus. I love that symbology. You know, I don't often wax numerological, but I was, before an astrologer, I was a numerologist. And the number 8 has so many wonderful connotations to it. And 8 Taurus to me spells plenty. It spells abundance, right? We have the infinity symbol in the 8 going round and creating a constant flow of giving and receiving. And in Taurus, a very financial oriented sign, a sign that represents abundance. It's almost like our souls have aligned with this idea of spring being abundant, this particular spring being abundant, because not every spring is the sun in Aries at the same time the moon is in Taurus. It just doesn't work that way. So in this particular time period, then, we have the moon in Taurus that is reminding us to be fruitful, right? That we are abundant, that to keep to... I always call Taurians, I love Taurus energy because it's really about manifesting, right? They are manifestors. And they're very powerful when they manifest, both equally what they want, but also what they don't want, right? That's the power of manifesting. The universe doesn't necessarily hear the difference between the I want this or I don't want that, right? The don't doesn't really come in. It's what you're focused on. It's what your emotional energy is centered on. If your emotional energy is really centered on something that you don't want, you're attracting it to you. But if your emotional energy, your beingness is focused on what you do want, then with this moon in Taurus right now, you can really be powerfully attracting it to you. It helps in the creative process. So I find that fascinating. And the moon is in a trine with Jupiter. Excuse me, it is not. I'm sorry. In a trine with Mars. And it's trining Mars in a way that from an earth sign, earth to earth, Capricorn to Taurus. And that means that you have the energy of new beginnings with Capricorn, because Capricorn actually is a cardinal sign. Cardinal is a mode of operation. And the way that Capricorn operates is it opens up to something new. It starts the ball rolling. Taurus is more of a fixed sign. Fixed means it stays the course. It's loyal. It's trustworthy. You can depend upon it. It's dependable. So we have two of the modes of operating through Earth right here in the charts today. Right. So we have a real good ability to sustain ourselves, perhaps even if we move down the road of creating wealth or creating whatever it is that we desire. Not everybody desires wealth. So wealth is just one component. If you desire relationships, that's also part of the abundance. It's also part of Taurus. Taurus being the ruled by Venus is also about the energy of relationships. So we have some really good energy through the moon. The moon is also trining Saturn. Now that's not always a feely good kind of thing. Anytime the moon and Saturn come together, it can sometimes feel like a Debbie Downer, but it gives us a dose of reality. right? Reality check, right? Sometimes we have to remember we're sitting here on a physical planet, and not everything happens in the moment that we want it. And not everything happens in the way that we thought it would happen. So we have to remember that with the moon in a trine to Saturn, that the universe is working on our behalf, but things don't always come in the way that we expect them. And that's why when I tell people about manifesting, when we're talking about creating something in your life, I always will say, add something like this or something better, because it tells the universe that, not thy will be done, let's say, as opposed to my will be done, right? Because I have this limited perspective, remember, but Spirit has the unlimited perspective. So I'm always going to want to cave to the universe's perspective because they can see all the players. I can't always see all the players. So the moon reminding us that. The moon is also sextiling. Sextile is a 60-degree angle. It is sextiling Neptune, which tells me that we are extraordinarily intuitive right now. All we have to do is tap in. We don't really have to take any more action. It's coming to us. So watch your dreams, watch your intuition. I got a question this morning from a girl, one of my clients, who wanted to know about splenic awareness, which in human design is an authority that you can have when your spleen is defined. And splenic awareness means that you're intuitive. And we all have the spleen, right? Whether it's defined or not, you have a spleen. Not the organ, the spleen, but a spleen energetically in your human design template, which says that we all have the capability of being intuitive. If it's defined, it's more consistent. You may have a very consistent way where intuition comes to you. Maybe it's through dreams, maybe it's through vision, maybe it's through hearing or something else, right? If it's open, you have a more inconsistent way of being intuitive. It can come from any number of directions, and it may never come from that same direction twice. So being open to listening to your intuition helps you be on the right path throughout this particular season. And the last thing, the moon is squaring Ceres. The moon squaring Ceres while the sun is trining Ceres. Interesting, don't you think? Trine saying the flow is going, square suggesting some challenges. So here's my guess. Plenty is not sustainable, right? Let me see if I can define this a little bit better. So the spring is a time of planting and new growth. Following the spring comes the summer, where it comes into its fullness, and then followed by the fall, where it is the harvest and the beginning of the die-off. And then there's winter, where everything goes into its seasonal quiet time and waiting for spring's renewal and rebirth. So it's a flow of energy. So the moon squaring Ceres is reminding us that everything ebbs and flows. That just because we may have plenty and everything is going well, it can be followed by leaner times. So it reminds us to do things in a sustainable way, right? So if you're doing something and it feels good and you want to keep doing it and doing it and doing it, is that sustainable? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. If we take all of the tulips in the fields out there and we cut them and make them floral bouquets, then we are harvesting tulips and not necessarily the bulbs. So in some cases, you have to be able to have some of the fields where they just cut the tops off and let the bulbs grow, and in other places where they're harvesting the flowers so that they can sell the flowers. That's sustainable. When we go into a forest, our forestry practices right now are pretty dismal, at least here in the Northwest. I see sometimes big patches of land that are just like decimated. It looks like a bomb went off and it just, took all the trees out of this, particular chunk of land. And I know they think that's sustainable because, we left the trees off to the left and we left the trees off to the right. But a better way that foresters will tell you, and scientists, even if they're worth their salt, will tell you, is to thin the forest, not to take all the trees, but to thin the trees so that you leave some of the forest intact, right? So that the ecosystem itself stays sustainable. That costs more money though, right? So the Forestry Service and the companies like Weyerhaeuser and so forth, they don't do that. Instead, they decimate and then they plant new trees, thinking that's sustainable. Well, that's not always sustainable, right? New trees die. The trees here take a lot of number of years before they grow. It's going to be 35 to 50 years, maybe even 100 years before that patch of land they decimated is healthy again. And I want you guys to think about that in your own lives, right? If we're harvesting everything, if we're taking everything, then even on an energetic level, if you're working, and then you blow out your energy, that wasn't sustainable. So remembering during this time to stay in the sustainability of things. I hope that makes sense, right? The Moon Squaring series is really talking about sustainable energy or sustainability in general. I heard an interesting story this morning in passing on the news about here in Washington State, because we have a lot of volcanic action going on here. There's a lot of geothermal energy available to us. And finally, the lights go on and somebody says, okay, well, let's start working with this geothermal energy, taking the heated water and running it through transformers or I forgot what they called them. Anyway, I'm going to call them transformers, but I know that's not right. And generating electricity from this superheated water. Brilliant, right? It's sustainable, it is clean, and it's renewable. You got to love that, right? So being that we're looking at a very fertile period of time, what can sustain that fertility for longer, right? What can we do to ensure that there's plenty in the seasons to come, both with your personal energy and with the things that you have in your life? Okay, that's what I want to leave with you in this spring equinox, is this idea of keeping things in balance and keeping things renewable and keeping things in a sustainable mode. All right. So I think what I want to do, I haven't pulled a card. Some mornings I like to just pull the card so I have it already done. But I think this morning I'm going to pull a card. And my intention for pulling this card is to give us an idea of what we can expect for this spring equinox or the season of spring. And so, card already fell out. Oh, lovely. And she fell out right side up. It is the Breathe card, number 29, which I find fascinating since 2018 is an 11 year, right? And now we have the 11 card, or 29, because 2 plus 9 is 11. She's beautiful and blue. It looks like she's sitting on a cloud. She might even be meditating. Yes, she is. And I want you to look closely. Let me see if I can bring this in. Do you see the face of God in her? Right? All these cards have the face of God within them, or the face of spirit or goddess, whichever you believe, whatever you want. Right? She's beautiful. So let's see what this card tells us. Perfect card, Meanie. Yes, you're right. Number 29. 29, breathe. The essential meaning is patience, waiting, going slowly, wellness, meditation, and trust. Wow. That's a big wow, right? Because I guarantee you she's picking up the fact that for the next foreseeable couple of weeks, Mercury's in retrograde. So we do have to have a sort of patience about us. So the message, the Oracle's message is patience in all things is called for right now. What do you need to do when you're in a rush? Slow down, of course, meditate and trust, breathe and repeat. Humans cannot exist without drawing breath. Now is the time to allow the life-giving element of air to replenish your body, your being, and your very essence. Stop to smell the roses or the tulips or the daffodils, and breathe in the sunlight and release the darkness, and miracles will appear. Love it. So let's read the prosperity message, since I really feel like this is a very fertile time, and to me that spells prosperity. The prosperity message says you have worked long and hard. Your dreams are coming to fruition and you want to hurry things along. You are the slow one moving languidly yet still progressing right now in a rhythm dictated by your authentic nature, the essence of your dream and the will of the universe. Slow and steady wins this race. You will indeed win if you relax, stay the course, trust your intuition, and breathe. I think we talked about all of that today. I could have just pulled the card and said, okay, everybody, have a great day. I love this. Okay, so our card today is Breathe. And by the way, let me just say, again, for those who might be new, this is the Wisdom of the Oracle deck by Colette Baron Reed. Beautiful deck. She is an awesome, I don't know, this woman is magical. Because I felt the magic from these cards from the moment I got them. Thank you, Debbie, for sending them to me. I've loved every minute of having them. And I think that's a profound message for us all to take with us this morning. I want to remind everybody, Thursday the 22nd is the day that I have a guest, Maxine Taylor, coming on with me on the radio, on the show in the morning. She is going to be, I think we're going to have some really interesting things. She's a Gemini too, so you're going to have 4 of us here, not just 2 of us. And I'm sure she is going to be, she was lively when I was talking to her. She's the one that does the Trumpology report. So maybe we can tickle some of that out of her and give us an idea of what's coming up for April with the president. I'm not sure. So we'll see what we can get from her. Don't forget, I think I'll do it today, actually. I will post the link because we're going to do this in Zoom. And I hope everybody will follow that link and come in live in Zoom so that we can all see one another, so that we can all talk with one another. And that would be something that we could do. It'll be practice for a webinar setup, because I'm about ready to put out there that we're going to do the webinar in human design on type, strategy, and authority. So we'll use it as practice, right? How is it that we can all be in the same Zoom room together and be able to talk with one another and interact with one another? I love the way we interact here on Facebook. Really, I do. But it's kind of one-sided, right? I can only read your comments. I can't see your beautiful faces. You can see my face, but you know, that's really not the same, right? We want to be able to see one another and interact with one another. So let's do that on Thursday. Be looking for the link. Register. Register just means that, you know, you're going to have the link to be able to get in. And if you guys have any questions, any concerns, any, you know, personal things going on with you about what's going on in your chart, let me know. And in the meantime, I love you all. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.